Hey everyone, welcome back to the next episode of the Instones podcast. I have Shahriar here. He is someone that came into my world through LinkedIn, and I realized that when I noticed these three words pop up on his profile, Autism Innovation Lab, I needed to know more. And we are going to talk here. This is going to be our first robust conversation that he and I have ever had. And a lot of times, those are where the best nuggets, I believe, rise to the surface that I always want to share with you all as listeners and fellow parents, mothers, and caregivers of children with severe autism. Shahriar, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for doing this. It's always nice to meet other parents around the world doing something,
Mm-hmm.
right? To bring awareness and share information and share knowledge and bring hope to families, whether you have, level 1 autism or moderate or severe or profound, like we do. My son is 17 now. He's nonverbal. I always tell other parents, and they always know what that means when I tell them this. We're still able to manage him at home, but I don't know. One day we may not be able to. Oh, I'm not getting any younger.
Mm-hmm.
The number one issue that I hear from parents all over the world is, obviously you've heard this before, what will happen to my kid when I'm gone, which is really contrary to the natural order of things, right? You
Yes, I
think
talk with my
you live a life, you do the best you can, you try to accumulate things. I'm
hmm
sorry to so so petty, but that's the world we live in. And you
Yes.
leave your kid or kids whatever you have, and I don't know. I want to think that you die happy. Like, okay, I did the best I could. I taught my kid everything I know, and I left them everything I have. I can't, I don't want to think of it. My time is up. I die happy. But that's not the way autism parents, especially profound autism parents' lives work. After the diagnosis, the worrying just begins. It doesn't end. And just like anything else in life, when you're faced with a challenge, as people, we have different ways of going. Either
hmm
you kind of go into yourself and maybe feel a little sorry and begin to kind of internalize, and who knows what, what, how you fall,
hmm
or you kind of take a look in the mirror and say, you know what, my kid needs me. I can do something to leave the world a little bit better. Literally, like Colin Farrell said last year, I want the world to be kind to my son.
hmm
I said it, but I don't
It's
care
simple
who he
as
is. Yeah, but it's just that simple.
that.
It's just that simple. You want
We've
the world to.
complicated it so much, and I know that that's because of the complexities of the grief timeline and the expectations and the conditioned things that we thought were supposed to happen if we just followed this set of guidelines for becoming a healthy, capable, mature adult from from our family of origin. And you tapped on something when that first sentence you said, which I think about so often. I never in a million years thought that these early stages of motherhood would last so long, ever, right? I have a typical 12-and-a-half-year-old. Those were hard to begin with. Then you add on this never-ending cycle. There's a real friction point of being able to stay mindful to the present, but the mindfulness in the present moment is really difficult. So it's
It is.
navigates this like it's really wonderful with how present we get to be, and in it lies the hard.
Yeah. I failed to mention I have two boys, 16 and a 17-year-old. The 16-year-old is neurotypical, and he's got all the same teenage problems as
Mhm,
anybody else has in the
mhm,
world,
mhm,
almost sometimes more
mhm.
challenging
Yeah,
because we don't know often how to help him. As chicken nuggets and a couple of music boxes with my other son, his world is set.
mhm,
He is 100% happy, and I can manage that. I
yeah,
don't know always, to be honest, as a dad, with the complex world with social media and all uh, uh, the high school, middle school challenges that typical neurotypical kids go through. I always tell people they're 16 and 17, my boys, but one thinks he's 40, one thinks he's two. And,
exactly.
and it's difficult to modulate as a parent. You mentioned you have neurotypical kids. Difficult to modulate as a parent. How do I 40-year-old, 2-year-old? How do I, like, one thinks he knows everything at 16, the other one is two, and it's disorienting
It is, it's very
because
disorienting and having to reorient all the time to the specific child within that. I mean, that can again, and that creates complexities within those relationships too. I don't how are your sons? Do they interact at all?
Not really, to be honest. Look, there's lots of ways relationships could evolve. In one respect, my younger son may be worried that he may have to look after his
Mhm.
older, disabled, severely challenged brother. In another respect, we want him, my typical son, to have a typical life to the extent that we can alleviate the burden of dealing with all the challenges of severe autism at 30, 40, 50. Those are what parents try to do. They don't want to saddle their other kid with all
Yeah,
the
I had
baggage.
my typical oldest who's 12 and a half, going on 48 as well. She said something, and I realized that it was just the fact that she has to ask that question. Her life is forever changed. She said something to the extent of, "Wait, so will someone help me decide these things?"
Yeah,
And it was so powerful, and I kind of took pause and I said, "Oh, of course, my love, like this is something that we will have conversations and they will evolve through the years and things are set in place." Yet the idea that a 12-year-old girl and a 16-year-old boy have the thought of that places them in a conceptual spiral that is very different than their typical peers. And I think I'm always sensitive to that because their
right.
typical peers are not thinking about this at all. It's not
No,
even on their
I know that my neurodivergent son is my responsibility.
radar. Mhm.
And in so many ways, when I die, I want to take that responsibility with me. I don't
Yeah.
want to leave it to somebody else.
Mhm.
My other son deserves to have his own life.
Yes.
And make his own mistakes and live. I always go back, and I know Rain Man is not the movie to
Yeah.
quote always, but every time I think back when the that facility superintendent is telling Tom Cruise on the steps, "What would you have done if you knew you had an autistic brother?"
Mhm.
And he goes, "I don't know. I just wish I knew." I mean, so okay, they know, uh, but what could I expect my other son to do other than maybe naming him in a trust, in a special needs trust, as a trustee or an executor of our estate or something like that?
And those are physical things too. I think it's so layered and deep nuance about the emotional parts that are much more of the what is behind the question of
Right.
how it decides.
And so to answer your first question, Autism Innovation Lab, how did that come about? Look, like all parents, like I said in the beginning, you begin to look at what can you do. You could either internalize and not do anything and feel sorry for yourself or your situation. I never felt that way. I always felt like, and I'm kind of a retired public servant, so my DNA is public service. It wasn't like I had to make a big jump into some world. I was involved with nonprofits and public service and community engagement and public engagement practically for 30 years.
Mhm.
It's somehow during COVID, I launched my own podcast called Autism Spa, and I was trying to just connect with people to help, just like you're doing so well, much better than I, to connect with people and bring knowledge and insight. And part of what I was ended up doing is talking with a lot of startups and innovators
Mm.
in this space, and I was just riveted.
Yeah.
I always ask, what's your connection to autism? Because some of the people that are innovating in the space have no connection to autism. They're just innovators and they're thinking like they're super smart, right? Others, most often, are parents or
Mhm.
caregivers,
Mhm.
and I'll explain that in a minute. So I kind of got the bug during COVID while I was doing the podcast and talking with doctors and scientists and
Mhm.
research. Again, nothing in my field. My background is public administration and politics and government and that kind of stuff. So I got the bug and I started mentoring some autism startups around
Mm.
the world, actually. And I began to talk to parents around the world who were doing something. They were tinkering with an app, some gadget. Usually it was an app or some
Yeah.
platform,
Yeah.
something to do to make life better for their kid. And it was all very personal. It was
Mhm.
all like,
Very mission based.
well, my kid is not verbal or nonverbal, and he or she is able to do X but can't do Y. So I created this app or this thing um, to help alleviate one little aspect of life.
Yes.
and everything from finding nannies, special
Yeah.
needs nannies, right? I mean, like, no one had to explain to me ever in any of the startups I've ever spoken with the validity of the value proposition because
Yes, yes. Well,
yes,
isn't that
nannies,
so true? Is that like these small little, what many would perceive as the micro needs of a
right?
parent, you and I would go, "Nope, I get it." That's
Yeah,
actually brilliant in comparison.
yeah,
That is
yeah.
gonna
I'll take
alleviate
it.
something that might take a few pounds off of my out of my backpack, and
I'll take it.
wonderful. I'll take it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's exactly right. I mean, this is exactly the point, and this is why I called my podcast "Autism Spa." By the way, to try to alleviate stress
Yes.
for families because this is stressful life. Whether you're level 1 or level 3, it doesn't matter. You're dealing with change, and not everyone deals with change very well. So I was doing that, and again, mentoring startups. And again, I got the bug. And once I kind of retired from government, just up until last year, um, I was invited to be the exec director of the Autism Society of San Diego,
Amazing.
which was a great experience. I learned a lot. I was embedded in the community with support groups. And going back to our earlier conversation about maybe moms and dads, I quickly learned moms and dads process grief differently.
Men and women live life differently, Shay.
They live their life differently. And I mean, the young moms, would come to some of these support groups and choked up, not because of the diagnosis.
Mm-mm.
They were worried they're not doing enough. They were beating themselves up.
Yep.
Am I getting enough respite hours? Am I getting enough ABA hours? Am I getting all the stuff that that you probably have done,
Mhm.
which to be honest, other than asking my wife, it didn't like that didn't process with me as the way to adjust to what's happening.
Well, I think that fathers, again, there's so many layered of like psychological the experience of just having a child with any diagnoses, I think is processed in the male mind based on our conditioning in the female mind differently. I think that women just tend to, I mean, to paint a really broad stroke, we tend and befriend, right? We seek out the other women that are going through this and try to listen. It's not that men don't want to, it's just not on the top of your radar.
It's just not the way we were
And
brought up.
it doesn't matter where in this country you were raised or if you're out of this country. I would love to get a degree in evolutionary biology because I find this stuff fascinating. I find it fascinating because men and women
Yeah.
do. They really do.
And the men that I spoke to in our support groups, in fact, I started a dadvocate support group
Amazing.
to talk to get the dads organized. The dads looked at the world in a transactional way.
Mhm.
They would come to these support groups and say, now I got to earn a living for 2 lifetimes.
Right.
They're looking at it transactionally, not from an emotional standpoint. Of course, they're impacted the same way.
It's their
We
child.
have not, moms and dads, would not, we haven't had a conversation with our son ever in
Mhm.
17 years. We
Yeah.
hang on words that he may say in passing out of
Mhm.
context, or the nonverbal communication we're able to, thank God, have with him because he's
Yes.
able to take our hand and lead us to something. and
Mhm.
and and thank God he can understand hundreds of words. He just can't
Yes.
communicate and reciprocate the way you and I are used to it. So, you learn that. You learn what triggers to avoid. You learn how, parents are resilient that way. And so getting back to that worry that drives a lot of parents and drives a lot of innovation
That's right.
in that I know how to speak to my son, somebody else won't. So how do I innovate? How do I
Mhm.
leave the world a little bit better with new technology, new solutions, so my son can survive
Yes.
without me, right?
Yes.
I have nobody wants to live forever, and we just want to make sure that our kids are taken care of. So all these conversations and talking with parents and seeing the drive in parents, and then also seeing, frankly, the faults, the fact that a lot of small startups, any startup anywhere, whether you're embedded in autism or IDD,
Mhm.
is really difficult to scale. It's difficult to take one good idea off the shelf that you tinkered with in the garage, whether it's hardware or software, and then make it available on every shelf
Right.
everywhere, right?
Yes.
Even with the internet. So I kind of got focused on that scaling challenge.
Mhm.
So when I looked at trying to help, it wasn't just investing in or being a co-founder or partner
Mhm.
with a few transformational startups that I felt could really have impact in the community. And when I say transformational, and I'll go back to the ecosystem that I'm creating in a minute, and that is, maybe therapeutics, meds, uh, things that are dealing with the most profound symptoms and challenges of autism. If it could be diagnosis, it could be, like I said, therapeutics. I don't use the word cure, but of course, as a parent of a severely autistic, I want my son to be the best he can be. You
I
know?
always say if we leave it at that, there's no revelation that won't allow us to intake information and stay curious. That's
Yeah,
always my same I'm charged with the same mindset as you, mindset and heart. It's
yeah.
to
I mean,
become the
how do we
person
help?
and do and help
I mean,
them.
you want all your kids. I mean, this is what you learn especially um, as a profound autism parent, unconditional acceptance.
Yes.
Right? It's not like I want him to have all these challenges for the rest of his life.
Right.
No, I want him to be able to communicate, to be happy, to have a life, to be independent. The same thing I
Mhm.
want from my other kid, I want for this one. Uh, but in many ways, in the 17 years I've gotten to know my son, autism has become woven into his personality.
Mhm.
In so many, he is a pure-hearted,
Yes.
joyful soul.
Yes.
That is who he is. Now,
That's
if
literally full stop. That's amazing.
there's autism, as we call it, disability or challenges, and the fact that he can't communicate and all
Mhm.
those, or verbally, those make him be such a pure and honest and transparent person. And I mean that because
I love that. You're
that's who
absolutely
he is.
that's just who he is,
Yeah,
and I just think maybe there's a way for it always to be yes and. Yes, you want to help. I think we I don't know, as an American culture, it's really hard to sit in that very gray space in perpetuity. We just even if we sit in it for a chapter of our lives, we're like, "Thank God that gray chapter's over." Well, we as parents, with the children we have, that's just the norm. That's the X and Y axis and Z axis, and we are just gray on every way we turn. And it does make you start to realize maybe it's all yes and it's just going to be like that. And I don't know if it seems to me we probably feel similarly. It's really evolved my own mindset and transformed the way I make choices as a 42
yeah,
year old. I almost said 30. I
yeah,
wish I was in my 30s as a 42-year-old mother.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, it's there's another aspect again, becoming an advocate, a parent advocate like you and others in this field. You talk with a lot of self advocates, and you learn, it's not, you learn to respect the identity of the people you're dealing with. I mean, look, if your son or daughter came out as gay or trans or some other, when I say unconditional acceptance, that is the whole thing.
Yes.
I don't get to choose. And I often think about this, about, you know, if you could go back in time,
Mhm.
because we were concerned about autism before we had kids too,
Hmm.
like a lot of people. I talk to parents, I'm sorry, couples who are planning to have kids, who are worried that their kid, I mean, this is the world we live in, who are worried that their kid's going to be autistic, and they don't know.
Mhm.
This is one parent told me, they don't know if they have the strength to deal with it. As
Right.
if, as if you and I took a,
Trust me. Trust me. If you saw me in my 20s, you were like, "That girl is not ready. She cannot handle this. Dad, do not give her that. No,
no,
you're gonna give her 2?
none of us.
You're gonna give her 2 of
Yeah.
No, 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 no. No.
None of us have went to class for this. We're making it up as we go along. But to getting to the unconditional acceptance part, and again, I want to go back to what we're doing in the lab, and that is because it's foundational to why I'm doing what I'm doing and what's driving every decision I'm making in the Autism Innovation Lab. And that is if I could go back and choose qualities about my son, both of my
Mhm.
kids,
Mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily say, "Oh God, at least just make sure he's not autistic or special." Those are the things I would wish away. I would wish that he could obviously healthy
Yes.
or be able to
Express.
be the best he can be. I
Hmm.
would wish he could be a positive force in the lives of people around. I would wish all kinds of things. I went through this in my head for almost 2 decades, and wishing autism away wasn't like, look, you have parents of Down syndrome kids, and they say, look, these kids are the happiest.
Most joyful little humans.
My autistic son is able to experience pure joy. And then if he's unhappy, believe me, I know it.
You'll
There's
know,
no,
yeah. I bet
yeah,
I know all the
there's
way
no
in New
middle.
Jersey. Yes.
Yeah. I don't need to guess if he's unhappy. I know exactly immediately. And I feel like he's able to experience life without all the baggage that all the rest of us have
I
in a
mean,
more pure way.
they experience it as it is. They experience the world for what it is. And there is something again, having a now you have 2 boys, and my typical child is a girl. And, we live on the East Coast, and we're right outside of New York City, and, she is a New York City born and, child. And when I think about the conditions of her life that she's just absorbed, and what her siblings quite literally do not care about in any capacity, sometimes I jokingly say, like, you do realize your sister could give like 2 cents about what you're just describing. And I love that.
Right.
I love that. And she'll say, it's this back and forth dialogue. And I said, that's what I'm saying, that there's beautiful parts of autism that even as a sibling and as a parent, we can go, God, that's a wonderful way to see the world. It just is. They sit, I mean, autistic level 1, maybe autistic higher functioning are known to be deep truth tellers, right? And they just tell the truth. And I
Yeah.
think that might be what we're experiencing with our children with more severe traits. They
Yeah.
experience
I
the
mean,
truth.
it's, it's kind of nice to be totally honest.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
look,
what
sometimes I'm shaving or something, I get a pimple on my face, and my son comes and puts a finger right on the pimple, you
yeah,
know, or something something doesn't belong right on your face and your body. You come
yeah,
right out of, does this makes me look fat? Yes, it does. I mean,
exactly.
so the world can use a little bit more honesty, and I would flip it on the non-autistic world and say, could you go to work tomorrow and be honest with everyone at work? Because my son
Exactly.
can.
Exactly.
So
He'll do
I
that
don't know
all
who's
do that
disabled
all day
now.
long. He probably wouldn't last that long in a job.
It
They'd be
wouldn't
like,
last so long.
I always laugh the story of a real quick anecdote. My daughter Millie has like Pantene Pro V hair, right? And she could it doesn't. I could shave it off; it wouldn't matter, right? But she has no care, no attachment to this beautiful strawberry blonde hair. And when she was little, I would put the knot in and with the bow, And she realized I realized quickly that she hated the feeling of it, right? That has now transpired into any bow that she sees on any child, she feels that she has to rip out. Okay. And I believe that her life and her mission is like save the bows from all these girls. Like that is so annoying to have in your hair. I'm going to rip it out. I can only imagine how annoyed you are. I'm going to take the agency on that. And it's become this like funny, line of her life is like she's just saving little girls from these terrible hair bows that their moms put them in. But it's just, I
That's
think that
funny.
she tells her truth so deeply of like, that's annoying to have in your head.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, these kids and adults see the world very differently. And the last thing I'll say about my son's gentleness is
Mhm.
that anything he bumps into, he goes back and rubs to make sure they're okay. And it could be a table, it
The
could be a
sofa?
chair, it could be certainly people, but a door, anything erupts, he goes and makes sure they're okay. If he steps on my foot, he touches my foot with his foot to make sure, are you okay? The other day I was driving and somebody cut me off and I was like, "Arr!"
Yeah, yeah.
yelling at and he holds my hand and looks in my eyes and holds my hand really tight,
Sweet.
in a very deliberate way. Are you okay? You know, I mean, you know what? I gotta tell you, nobody else does that in my life. Nobody
Cares
else
about
checks on
why.
me.
Yes.
This one does. Whatever we call disabilities, they have other abilities and they have a certain joy and peace in their hearts that other neurotypical human being could benefit from,
Absolutely.
if they were so inclined. But
So go back to Autism
look,
Innovation Lab.
yeah, so, I digress, but this is, if I have ADHD, well, now the apple does not fall far from the tree. We're all reflections of our children in some ways. Look, so, I after I left the Autism Society of San Diego, and for years, even when I was a mentor to these autism startups, I always felt like I could help in some way. I could either be an investor, be an angel investor in some of these startups that I felt could be transformational. I wanted to have whatever time I got left. I wanted to have real impact. Not just, I'm not knocking any cool apps that everybody loves. I'm just saying what could really save lives and change lives. And so, for example, since my son used to run away a lot and eloping and fell from the second story window, broke his leg once, police action, helicopter. I mean, in the pool, you name it. I got a stack of dead iPhones behind me because they were all in my pocket when I jumped in the pool, right? So one reason I got into the technology is I wanted to, this is a gizmo
Mhm,
wearable watch that Verizon makes. And I used to
mhm,
work for Verizon. And I kind of began to try to talk Verizon into, hey, listen, can you guys develop more technology to help this community? And they, to their credit, they were 100% open to it. In fact, they had a disability accelerator, to support disability innovation,
mhm,
technology that could the blind, the deaf, autistic, I mean, to their credit. So that kind of made me think, wow, how could I bridge this gap between big corporate America and small business, parent entrepreneurs, and this innovation lab over the past 5 years actually began to kind of take shapes. A few months ago, I kind of launched it, and I've been overwhelmed, to be honest, with the level of interest and support from autism startups. And I mean, biomed, biotech startups, people that want to
mhm,
not experiment, but they want to study meds, therapeutics. Obviously, you've heard of leucovorin, but
mhm,
beyond that, other therapeutics to help with symptoms of autism, biomed, these are doctors, PhDs, physicians, researchers that have come to me and say, look, we would love some help to be able to, um, uh, test this technology.
yes.
I'm not doing this is one of the key things, again, foundational. I wanted to, and I talk about this frequently, but I want everyone to understand, you know, um, uh, I am very particular in what I begin to work with and engage in
Mhm,
because I'm a parent.
mhm,
Explain to people I'm not necessarily in the sexy startup world. I'm in the business of hope. And I'm not going to look at another parent's eyes and say, we wasted your time, your money, or your whatever with something that was ridiculous. Like it was never going to change your lives.
right.
Only interested in transformational technologies and biomed and biotech solutions that can really save lives. And I mentioned the wearable device because that's what got me into this business. Life safety
Oh,
wearable device, right?
do you think that it was because of your son that you're able to ask and invest for those apps and innovators that are actually going to transform the lives? I
Talked with a lot of app developers and their cutesy
Mhm,
totsy little things. And I go,
mhm,
oh, this is like one, I talked to one mom on the East Coast who had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on an app to help her daughter is like level 2 or level 1 or something,
mhm,
to help with their schedule. I go,
yes,
okay, that's great. I'd like to help, but in the time I have left, I'm very cognizant. I don't think I have any disease, but I don't know how long I have.
yes,
I'm 57. How many years do I have to innovate to be able to really get into a handful of life-saving, life-changing technologies to change lives? And an app that helps you with your schedule isn't it?
that's right,
Just
that's
yesterday,
right.
another, she's actually in New York. Maybe you've heard of her, Sensational You.
Mm-mm, I
She
have
makes,
not.
she makes sensory clothing. So no tag, no buttons, right? And she's not even connected to autism. No kid on the spectrum. She was asking me. I've talked with her several times. She was asking me to be on her board, help her. I go, I need to focus on this big stuff first, the big rocks. Then I'll
Yes.
get to the little rocks. Right now, I got to get these things set up, and I'm in conversations with several biomed companies right now to really focus on therapeutics and diagnostics that are new.
Yes.
They have data behind them. They have research from reputable sources, but they need more research to bring something to market.
Yes.
So that's what I'm
It's
doing.
yeah, it's there's they like you said, the hope that we can provide is also tangled with the experience that we have had individually with the children that we have been given. And I think sometimes it's hard to divorce those 2 in a way that we can help as many as we can. And at the same time, I fully believe that when we get really quiet about what our own strengths are as mothers and fathers and caregivers, it begins with that, then the experience, and then the thing that you can give back. I always love the phrase, how do you help the world? It's help people, help produce ideas, and then help produce things, right? So
Right,
it's
right.
always in that order for me because I think that in being the mother of Millie and Mac, people in their humanity matter number one.
Yeah. You know, I say it a little differently, but I approach everything from a top down,
Yes.
bottom up approach.
Yes.
Right. So I am getting involved with some advocacy work, which is where I live. I just came back from Washington D.C. at something called the Disability Innovation Forum.
Hmm.
I'll be doing more of that, I hope. I'm getting ready to go to Nashville next weekend, October 10th, to speak on a panel with something called Neurotech Frontiers,
Wow. Love
which is
that.
which is an event put on by the Frist Center for Autism and Innovation
Hmm.
at Vanderbilt. And we may do my lab is like going to do an MOU or agreement with Frist and maybe get a half a dozen other universities involved and then work with, like right now, I'm working with a bunch of UCSD students
Hmm.
because UCSD artificial intelligence students to help automate everything I'm talking about. So how could we help these startups with AI?
Hmm.
Because these one man, one woman shows, even the big ones, even some pharmaceutical companies that I'm talking with and other biotech companies, they have not jumped into AI as much as they should. I'm not an
Yes.
expert, but I know where we keep experts. So going to UCSD and overwhelmed with 40 different students, including a severely autistic one who is nonverbal, needs his dad and a keypad to communicate as a student there. He's going to be involved in our lab. So we're hoping that we can corral these people into a community, and then some of them I may invest in personally. Otherwise, they will become clients of our lab,
Hmm.
and who knows where it's going to go.
Do you see the future of AI and tech intersecting with the ability for employment for children like ours?
Yeah, yeah. The AI. I mean, I look at it this way: look, whatever is difficult for neurotypical people is more difficult for autistic people. And then obviously, if you keep adding the layers, it's more difficult. So, what can AI and eventually robotics, by the way, even this Tesla
Yes.
Optimus, whatever, it sounds silly, sounds like a joke, haha. But in maybe 10
Maybe.
years,
I mean,
yeah,
again, I mean, you and
you'll
I,
have a caregiver.
right. I always think about this. You have to suspend your own reality if you're a typical human in the investing side and the tech world. If you are sitting around and listening to a father and mother like you and I, we're not saying that that's 100% going to happen, but we know when we have this mysterious part of us going, well, maybe. Why wouldn't I? And I actually don't think it's hope. I think it just always holds on to the what if or the possibility that that could actually fractal into something. And I will never not disregard points of friction of where others say that will never happen. Well, we don't know.
Yeah. No, it's happening. It goes back to scaling. So
Yes.
right now you already have various robots being tested all over Europe and China. When will it be just like those movies, I, Robot or whatever? When
Yeah.
will it be a robot in every house as a caretaker
Hmm.
or someone, that could help the elderly, dementia patients, severely autistic, as someone that literally just make sure my son doesn't run out the door.
Exactly. I mean,
I mean,
having a free bolted front door, back door, side door, windows that are. I
yeah,
mean, again, I'm so thankful that I live in the time that I live in to create safe spaces. Yet at the same time, to alleviate the stressors of that is one of the things I keep saying is like that would be a life luxury. You know, that sits right next to unconditional love for me is unconditional safety for my kids.
Yeah. Well, this is the difference, I mean, between level 1, 2, and 3, between, again, the reason I got into it was life safety issues. Sometimes his IEP team starts talking to me about communication or this or potty training, whatever. I go, at home, I'm just trying to keep him alive,
Yeah,
and safe and hygiene and food. Beyond that, I don't have the bandwidth to do anything more.
right.
So we need help. Yes, I would like to have caregivers, but even if money was no object, who could I rely on?
Yeah.
Who could always be there, not call in sick, not have a
Family.
temper tantrum, not have their own family issues?
I actually yeah, exactly. I was working with a public relation firm helping them redo the recruiting marketing for RBTs in local ABA centers here in New Jersey. And I was speaking to the public relations manager on this account, and he said, I'm realizing that the retention rate and blah, blah, blah. And I said, we have to completely shift our expectations of what that looks like for those people that are applying for those jobs. And I was throwing at them different angles. And he said, you're basically saying you want to take someone who knows chaos so deep in their bones that the chaos of being a paraprofessional one-on-one aid for your child is like a no-brainer. And I said, yeah, give me the middle child of a family of 10. They will be the best RBT. They'll be the best. I don't want I don't want the like girl that decided to go to special ed who vacations on the Jersey Shore. Like and unfortunately I don't. Like that's not chaotic enough for her reality to transplant into what true chaos is at times. And so I know what you mean. It's yeah, even if there was money to be had, it's a level of, well, what energy am I willing to put into the search for something
Yeah.
that I don't even know if is out there?
Yeah, that's why, in fact, I've come across several autism startups related to caregiving,
Mhm.
finding caregivers,
Mhm.
some hybrid of care.com
Yes.
that um,
Do you know where I
training,
found you know where
monitoring.
I found the best caregivers on the fly when I travel? I travel a good bit with the kids, is in college towns. Because college towns tend to have a lot of master's level behaviorists looking for part-time work. And let me tell you, more than I find in my bedroom community of New York City.
Right,
Isn't that interesting?
right.
I'm sure near Vanderbilt, you're going to find a lot more part-time caregivers looking just to understand autistic children and young adults. Isn't
You,
it
you know
fast?
what some people are doing is hiring a au pair,
Mhm. Yeah.
foreign student
I
to
had au
come in
pairs
and,
for a number of years, and
right,
we aged out. I'll be honest, we sort of
aged
aged
out.
out.
Yeah, those don't last. To be honest, in our severe case, I cannot rely on grandma or grandpa.
No.
I'd be more worried about them. Uh, if
I mean,
my son
Shahriar,
persists.
I'll trust you to come.
Right.
I would
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
you know,
parents
if you
get it.
told me right
Yeah.
now, you're like, "I'm in dire straits. Can you get out to San Diego?" I'd be like, I mean, honestly, I
Yeah,
could.
come on to San Diego.
You probably would trust me more than you would trust
Of
someone
course.
that actually was a
Yeah.
caregiver, and vice versa.
It's funny. Yeah, as a matter of fact, grandparents and a lot of family, have a certain, I mean, of course they love their
Yes,
grandkid, but there's a certain distance there.
absolutely.
And on top of that, like I said, I would be worried about my very strong, very muscular, very powerful teenage son pushing, a grandparent down the stairs by accident. I could not. And then, there are things that only, unfortunately, this, everyone knows this, you know, don't- dads become the wrestlers in chief in a
That's right.
severe case, right? As soon as they outgrow mom and they're 6'2", 220, right? If they're severe and they're knocking walls in and they're maybe potentially, God forbid, hurting other siblings, that kid needs to go in a home. Sorry. I mean, it's a terrible decision terrible position to be in. I've talked to parents, older parents than I, who've made that terrible choice. And because their kid was just too severe, they had to, in one case, I think they had to be medicated for extended periods of time. Many, many families that I met in my ecosystem, sometimes they would have to call the police. There's a
Mhm.
code, I forget what it's 505 or something, some kind of a local code that they take. Something happens, the police come, they take your kid for 3 days of observation and
Right, right.
management, right? But even that has its own risk because
Absolutely.
I mean, the few police interactions I've had with when my son ran off could not have been better. Hats off to San Diego Police Department. I mean, they literally, on one occasion when he ran off, I had to, I was like literally 3 minutes away from the point that he ran off. The police surrounded him. They didn't try to arrest him or didn't try to yell at him or, what's that in your hand? No, they just kind of contained the situation and they were in communication with me because I was on 911
Mhm.
and they knew we were coming and, which is always the case, right? If a special needs loved one elopes or runs away, the caregiver or the parent is literally seconds, minutes behind them.
Right, exactly. Yes, it's not yeah,
It's not like my son like moved away and I
exactly.
didn't realize for 3 days. No,
Right.
I'm like literally
It could
because
have
we're
been
always
13
on. We're
seconds.
like
We're always on.
firemen and firewomen, right? We're always on. I have that. I don't have a pole from the second story to the
Yeah,
like fire
exactly.
department,
Like a fire
but that's
alarm.
what it feels like.
It
That's what it
does.
feels like my ear, my always on.
I always say,
Any
like, the
sound.
hypervigilance that is demanded of me my son is more of the eloper versus my daughter, and I do think I always try to, in some ways, think of it what it's helped me is that I'm more present in other ways in my life without them while I'm working or advocating because they've made me so hypervigilant that I sense things so much quicker.
Your life changes when you have kids, but when you have special needs kids, and especially if they're severe or profoundly autistic, you just really don't either sleep well anymore, or you got constantly. If there's too quiet, you get worried, you get nervous. Why is it quiet? We have get-togethers, and if I don't hear or see my son
Let me go
within a
check.
few
Yeah.
minutes, I go check on him. Right? It's not like I can sit around and relax,
Mm-mm.
finish a glass of wine. No,
And again, we can laugh. We have to, I always say we have to laugh about some of this because unless you can just go, yeah, I mean, I haven't had sat down for a full meal and gosh, I don't even know when the last time that was.
yeah.
But you know what? I'm again, this podcast has always been for the authentic and truth behind the actual lives of the parents and caregivers living this. And I just wanted to say thank you for what you have done because what you're saying to me and what you've shared is that finding the innovators and those that are developing things to actually provide care and hope, tangible relief in some capacity, that is your superpower. And it's
Yeah.
wonderful to connect on that. And I'll make sure to put all of your information in the episode summary when this goes live, because I think that we need to know that people like you are out there. I sit, my kids are 8 and 10. And so I sit sort of on that cusp of like not newly diagnosed, but not nearly off the cliff. And I think that we need more reminders that men and mothers, women, fathers are all out there doing work, like you said, in the vein of which they can help.
Last thing I'll say is one of my favorite quotes from probably a football dad to his son, what would you do today if you knew you could not fail?
Mm,
And when you look at innovation in the way that you want to have, the impact you want to have, and the life you want to have, what would you do today as a parent if you knew you could not fail? And I feel like, and I'm not alone. There's other people on this planet doing very much, thank God, doing, because I would not want to be alone in this. And I am lucky to keep coming across many different folks. We immediately begin to think about how do we collaborate? Because the other saying that I live by is a rising tide lifts all boats. So if
yeah.
you do good in your innovation and in your project, it helps me. If I do good, it helps you. So it's that camaraderie and collaboration, not only that bond that I share with parents around the world, but that innovation collaboration that supplements that bond. And now we're doing something for our kids. And my hope is that however small the idea is, if it's transformational enough, if you join our ecosystem, I'll make sure you don't fail. because I'll get it into our system and I'll lift everybody. Hopefully our tide will lift everybody's boat up, and we'll get through this together.
Well, I'm so glad to have you in my ecosystem now and to know that if there's anything that we can ever do to continue to uplift, those tides do rise higher the more conscious we are about those choices. So, Shahriar, thank you for who you are and being you and what you're offering to this wild and crazy journey of parenting.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And until next time on the Inchstones podcast.